Today has been marked by some pretty heavy processing about some decisions in my life that I would like to share with you as a way to demonstrate the importance and the value of reflection. And many of you already know this, right? But I invite you to join me. Today I was sitting in a cafe, a little outdoor cafe, and I saw this photo. It was kind of avant-garde, and it was of this woman. It might have even been a self-portrait in like under a bridge and in this gown and in a pose that was very interesting. And I noticed that it was a series actually, and it looked like that there were some special effects to superimpose the image with this symbolism. It's not so important what that was, but it immediately drew me in because it reminded me of when I was a professional photographer, and it reminded me of photos that I used to take that would stir the psyche, that would get at the depths of the soul. You see, there's something about being a photographer that you construct and control the outside world to create an internal experience in somebody else. And I've long since put down my photography equipment, my professional equipment, and also my official photography business. But I still actually take photos, but this time I try to represent my internal world through photography or videography. I'm really into taking videos now too. And what struck me about this is seeing these photos is this remembrance of a life path that I was too scared to take a long time ago. And it brought up a lot of sadness and a lot of regret. And I'm not one that usually feels that I've made mistakes, because I see the learning opportunities in every decision, even if things haven't turned out the way that I've wanted them to, or even if I haven't been able to shift into a reality that I've really wanted to. And so I'm usually not somebody that says, oh, I really made a mistake, or somebody else made a mistake. But this was like one of the first times that I really felt that I made a mistake. And even though logically, rationally, I knew that I couldn't have made another decision. But what saddened me about it is that decades went by, and there was a part of me, like when you have art inside of you, you know it because it stays inside of you and it always wants to come out in some way. And it doesn't matter what medium or technique that you're using. It's almost like this urge that needs to be expressed in some way. And so that's why a lot of artists will have different things that they experiment with, and they'll dabble in a variety of different things. They might be stuck on something like painting or photography for all of their life, but that doesn't mean that that's the only thing that they do. They express themselves in so many projects in so many different ways, because the art is this caged animal, and the cage is the mundane existence of the world. The artless, or the corporate art. No offense if you're a corporate artist. I know somebody who used to be, so I don't think they're listening, but even so, there's a place for that, right? But it tends to be very diluted art because it's pretty. And when you walk into an elevator, you don't want to be disturbed, right? You don't want to be challenged. That's why there's elevator music. You just want to get to your next floor in peace and hopefully quiet. And you don't want anything that's going to weigh on you for the rest of the day, because it's a transition moment. So corporate art has its place in transitions. Like at hotels, you don't want to walk into a hotel room and have to wonder what you're looking at on the wall and then be afraid to sleep at night. You're like, is that a clown? Is that a You know what I mean? It needs to just be easy to digest and background, but still aesthetic. And then there is art. Art that moves you, that makes you question things, that raises your hairs or gives you a visceral reaction. It might even be a yuck reaction. It might be fear, or it might be invigorating, or it might be titillating, you know? It might be a little seductive. It might play with concepts. And so when you have that voice inside you, the artist voice inside of you, then it never goes away. It never dies. And the mundane world feels like a cage because it doesn't feel like you have a way to really express yourself unless you're in an art venue. You know, you're in a gallery, or you have a web page, or you have your little portal, and then that's your place where you can express yourself. And then everything else is like, you know, Starbucks art, corporate art, and you go about your day-to-day life. And this is what I relented to back in the day, because apparently I have some weird art in me that I have some weird art, and I can't explain it. But recently I have picked up the video camera again. I mean, it's just, you know, my phone, but you know what I mean? Like I've picked up these projects again, and I'm in a different place in my life because now I don't care who resonates with it. Or I should actually say, I don't care who doesn't resonate with it. I actually care very much who resonates with it. But I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not afraid to be weird, and I'm not afraid to be different. And there's something freeing about that. But it took me decades to get here. You know, it took me like 2 decades or a decade and a half to get here. And now that I've started making that art again, if you're interested, you don't have to check it out. But I set up a new Rumble channel. You can search Sacred Journey Productions or the channel name Q Style by Dr. C. And it's edgy, it's dark, it's weird, and it's channeled, and it's subliminal. And like the latest thing that I made was I'm Not Human. And I videographed myself being taken over by almost this invisible entity. But I don't say that. I sing the words to I'm Not Human at All, which is a favorite song of mine and has been long before my awakening. And I sing it in a way that is different and is channeled. And I talk about the experience of losing your humanity to the consciousness expansion experience by letting the right one in. But all with performance and visuals. And a long time ago, I was yearning to make art like this. And I didn't worry about the composition. I didn't do multiple takes. And there are parts that, I'm not really happy with. I used to be such a perfectionist. It used to take me so long to edit photos because I was so worried about like people's judgment. I was so worried about getting it right. And I was so worried about, and that is definitely an experience that I don't want to go back to because it's exhausting, right? It actually really is. I want to express myself and put it out there and let it find the people that it resonates with, which at this moment is apparently nobody. It's a new channel. But you know what I'm saying, like, I haven't found my audience and I'm not sure if I'm gonna find them. But this is the point, right? And this is what I wanted to share with you, that when I was on the patio at the restaurant today and I was sucked into this photograph, and I was sucked into the symbolism and the voice of this photographer that I could feel, even if I couldn't understand with words, even if I can't describe what they were trying to convey to me, I felt it. And that to me is a pinnacle of art. When you feel it, you feel something, like, fuck, you feel something. And I thought about who I was those years ago when I wanted to express myself like that. And when I was trying to, but I was caught up in perfectionism, and I was so afraid of judgment, especially of my family, of my peers, of everybody, right? And so it did something to me. I allowed it to do something to me, which was to dampen my voice. And I fit myself into a box. And I used to go to art shows in Austin. And I'd go by myself because I didn't have a support circle at that time, a peer group that were into things like that. So I would just go by myself. And I loved it. And then I decided to get a real job and a real life. And the person that I was dating at the time was like the furthest from artsy. They were like engineer type, right? And I wanted to be liked and loved by them. I think we all do, especially in our 20s. We want to be liked and loved and accepted by the people that we're closest to and that we're attached to. And he never asked me to stop going to art shows. But when I would take photos of my feet and rose petals in the bathtub, and I would show it to him, he'd be like, okay, I don't get it. And I'd be like, okay. And, we'd go out photographing stuff, and I'd get obsessed. I was photographing. He would, be enjoying the hike or whatever, and I'd be obsessed with getting down low and taking a photo of, the light streaming on blades of grass at a certain angle, and I would just be so in awe of it. And he would say things like, I really wish I could see what you saw. And perhaps it's because he didn't feel anything when he saw my art. Because deep down, perhaps, if I'm really honest, we didn't actually vibe at that soul level. Although he was a great person, right? And the relationship was great, but the reasons that we chose it was not because it was a soulful love. It was an intellectual love, a philosophical love, and a physical love. And there's beauty in that experience too. But there are other flavors of love. And rapture was not something that we experienced together. But we did have a lot of debates about politics, gun control, the death penalty, and passionate ones at that. And it was very much in our head energy. It was in the head space. Somebody needs to hear this. So I felt this relenting and loss of myself, if I'm being open and honest. I felt that I self-compromised. Nobody asked me to. I did it voluntarily. And I did that for a very, very long time. And I stopped being into art. I stopped caring. I stopped making art. And then I became like a robot too. And I remember being in movie theaters with said person and friends and family. And if I would get emotional by cinema, I would pinch my legs to stop crying. So when I left the theater, I wasn't the only one that had tears streaked down my face, because that's the life that I built for myself. That's the reality that I created. And it came with a lot of amazing accomplishments and accolades, but it also came at this disconnection, the severing of my soul. And you know, like, I definitely didn't want to be weird in front of these people because they were my people. And I didn't want to be weird. But the people that I was trying to impress, the people that I was trying to gain affection, probably would have appreciated me a lot more if I was just fully myself. Because at that time in my life, I would get feedback from coworkers and friends that they didn't really know me, which is kind of weird if you think about it. Like, they didn't know who I was because I was like, I became like corporate art, diluted. My personality was virtually non-existent, non-memorable. If you met me at a party or a networking event, you probably wouldn't even remember me the next time you saw me, because I literally was like that painting in the elevator or in the mid-luxury hotel room. Utterly forgettable, but non-challenging, non-threatening, and, you know, checks the status quo box. And there was a part of my soul that I felt sad realizing that I gave up. And that hit me on that patio today as I remembered what it felt like to be youthful and full of enthusiasm and curiosity and sensuality and intrigue, and loving the experiences that resonated with that, and going to you know, like all sorts of weird off the beaten path performances and shows. And the more weird and off the beaten path, the more I loved it. So to find myself now here again, making art like that and not feeling afraid and being like, wow, that's really weird. I'm growling. I'm supposed to be singing, but I'm actually growling, you know, like, I'm going with it, you know, like wow, this kind of looks like a scene from a horror movie, you know, like that's really what wants to come out. It's like, it's interesting because I'm like, I have this inside me, interesting, it needs to come out. And even though, you know, it's still taking form and taking shape, I'm only, you know, 2 videos in, but I'm feeling the project, I'm seeing it, and I'm ignited again with that intrigue, with that curiosity. And this time I don't care. It's like I don't give 2 fucks. I don't give 2 fucks who doesn't like it. And I have this Instagram, like this artsy Instagram. It's kind of an experiment. I delete followers, try to keep it under 100. And I post, you know, like blurry portraits and poetry and things like that. And a lot of it is people that I've met at some point. And I realize that the people even that I've met in the last couple years also don't resonate with my art. And this is like my worst fear back in the day. You know, it's like the people that I know that I've actually met, I'm not talking about like strangers that I'll never meet. I'm like, okay, these are actual friends, my family, you know, like actual family. Yeah, they don't vibe either. But this time it's okay. And part of me wonders if I did have the strength and the courage then to just go for it and to not even worry about who liked it, who didn't like it, and judgment and whispers. Nobody actually really cares. That's what I've realized. We're all afraid of judgment, and very few people actually genuinely care, especially when they don't vibe and they don't resonate. And we live in a swipe culture. This is the message that I want to convey to you. If you have the artist in you, or if you have some authenticity in you that you are afraid of showing with the world, go for it, because very often people are so wrapped up in their lives and their feeds and the things that they are curating. Like, we all curate our own feeds, right? And the amount of time that people spend when they don't actually vibe with you is marginal. So your fear, my fear, is actually kind of an illusion. And this is what I've learned. You'd have to let the algorithms find your people. And the more weird you are, the more off the beaten path, the harder it is, because the algorithms are primed and set for the mainstream. There are categories. If you easily fit into a category, your rise to acclaim, your rise to whatever it is going to be a lot easier, because the path has already been cut. Where it's more challenging, and this is where I help people set up their TikToks for their authentic voices and their projects, and helping them to really connect with purpose and their authenticity, not just using a formula, but like really getting your voice out there, because I've gone through this journey. And I don't want you to have to take decades. If you're one of those, you don't have to. You can do it a lot faster than I did. When you are actually creating a niche, you have to be really, really patient, because the algorithms have to figure you out. It's a lot easier to piggyback and then to build a niche. But even then, your results are not going to be fast the more unique you are, because they don't know who to serve your content to. And getting your friends and your family to like your stuff doesn't help unless they actually really resonate with it, because all of their friends and their family, it's like circles and webs. And so if they're like really into boating, for example, and you're really into goth literature, and you're like, hey, Uncle Bob, can you please, just watch us and like give it a thumb? It doesn't help you. It does not help you. That's the old way of doing social media. We can throw that strategy in the trash. You have to be patient, and it's actually easier and more efficient to let the algorithm figure you out by understanding what are your keywords, what are their target audience keywords overlap with you, who likes your content, what else do they like, and then this is the process of interrogation, right? And so this is why, if you're afraid of judgment in today's world, yes, you might have some people who gossip about you, but I know of a performance artist, who died during a performance that was the talk of a circle. And it was pretty serious. It was actually very, very serious. And it was wondered if it was intentional, if it was not intentional. And it was in front of a crowd of people. And it was a dark performance. I was not present. I did not know the artist, but I was witness to the conversations about this. And even in a very, very extreme case like that, the conversations themselves became art. And that's what everybody was talking about, that the artist actually left a legacy of art. And my personal belief is that you don't have to do anything extreme to get people talking about your art. And if people are moved enough to talk about you, then it means that you're doing something right. This is my personal opinion now. It's actually much harder to get people to take interest than it is to be embarrassed, because people are interested and people have questions, or people have comments, or people like, you're a conversation topic means that you are relevant. More often than not, people are not relevant. And so this is the encouragement. If I had known this way back then, and if I felt comfortable enough being scrutinized and being weird and being different, then I would have taken a different path. And that's the regret that I felt. And that's why I felt like maybe I made a mistake. I actually maybe made a mistake, because now seeing that I'm back at this place and I could have done it a lot earlier, I feel like it is a PSA to encourage anybody to do the same, but to not wait decades and a half or a decade and a half to really do it. Because just go for it. If you have that artist, it doesn't go away. It actually doesn't go away. And it's time. It's your time. It's always been your time. The world is waiting for you. All right, we'll talk soon.